Hello everyone, how you all doing? Hope you're having a great day so far. Welcome to the 2024 Year in Sizecoding video. I'll go through the highlights of the demoscene releases pertaining to all things tiny sizecoding, meaning executable releases ranging from 8 bytes to 1 kilobyte in size. Sorry, 4 kilobytes and 64 kilobyte entries, you're too big to fit in the Tiny Intros Club. I have a time-lapse with all of the main demoscene events that happened throughout the year with some statistics on tiny sizecoding in particular. Do you have something to drink? Are you ready for the video? Let's go. Kicking things off, we had a Happy New Year 256 byte intro by Freddy. Then right in the first weekend of January, there was a Atari Last Party happening in Poland. Only two 256 byte intros released there, Zygota and Last 2024, both of them for the Atari XL. On the same weekend, the Halt Winter was taking place in Russia. The high-end 256 byte intro competition had 3 entries and was won by WBC with Firecraft for MS-DOS, and the low-end 256 byte intro competition had 8 entries and was won by Gokin with Spin 3D for the ZX Spectrum. The low-end 1 kilobyte intro competition with only 3 entries was won by an Electronica BK intro Magic Carpet version 2 by Niol. Meanwhile, in Belgium, Rsync was taking place. The only tiny intro there was the number 511 bus by Catnip for the TIC-80. A couple of weeks later, Spirit Zone event took place online and also had a nice little TIC-80 intro. And then the second week of February, we had another edition of the major online event dedicated to all things sizecoding. Don't know if you heard about it. It's called Love Byte. Once again, we broke the record of the highest number of executable releases released at the demo party. We had a massive 40 days countdown with original intros being released by different people every single day of the year leading up to the party. That alone was already revolutionary, and a whopping 24 categories of competitions and showcases during the event itself. Let's take a look at some of the highlights from Love Byte 2024. In 8 bytes, we saw the release of Oscillator on MS-DOS. In 16 bytes, we had Text Plus Moses for MS-DOS and XOR or Not to XOR by Joker for the ZX Spectrum. In 32 bytes, we had Poprask for MS-DOS and Spiraling Shape for the Apple II. In 64 bytes, we had Downfall by Helmut on MS-DOS. In 128 bytes, Volta and Consequences for the Micro W8 and Love4C for MS-DOS, Sign-On for the ZX Spectrum, and Thinking About Cats Again for the Chip 8 programming language running on a Cosmac VIP, a lesser-known microcomputer from the 70s. In 256 bytes, a very close matchup for the high-end competition with Midnight Dream by Ilmanit for the Micro W8, Bouncing Passion by Bellicus for the TIC-80, and Overdriven by Digimind for the MS-DOS. On the old school category, entering Area 64 for the Commodore 64 won over 256, Not Enough Space Odyssey for the BBC Micro. In 512 bytes, Inkblot by Pestis for MS-DOS won the high-end category, and Rorschach's Girlfriend from Joker on the ZX Spectrum won the old school category. Also worth mentioning, Hell Awaits by Vashek for the Commodore 64 and Chaos Cube for the Micro W8. The 1 kilobyte high-end was won by Endless Passions for the TIC-80, and Glenn's 1K for the Amiga won the old school competition over Plasma Mask by Dieter for the Apple II. Also worth mentioning, Alien City by MX for Windows. There were also competitions for tiny executable graphics and music, a Wild Showcase, Byte Jam, Basematic coding sessions, not to mention the seminars on sizecoding. Pretty much the best sizecoding event that ever took place. On the first days of March, The Space Between Our Ears 3 by Neural and Rebels was released, a 1 kilobyte intro for the PlayStation Vita, which is not a very common platform for sizecoding, but Hitchhiker made it happen. The next demo party with more significant sizecoding categories was the Forever demo party in Slovakia in mid-March for 8-bit computers, with a few 1 kilobyte intro competitions on different platforms. Highlight goes to Dash by Marquee Design for the Atari XL, Padam 1K by Busy for the ZVT PP01, a lesser-known Slovakian home computer from the 80s, and 8volution 2 by Syndicate for the ZX Spectrum. Then we had the strongest demoscene event of the year, the mythical Easter German party that we call Revision. 2024 was once again a massive year in terms of releases at Revision, and it included a 256-byte intro competition for MS-DOS category only, which saw the release of Remnants by Alcatraz, considered by many the best tiny intro of 2024. The rest of April was pretty scarce in terms of demo parties, only a small Atari meetup in Hull in the United Kingdom, where Marquee Design released a 128-byte intro for the Amiga called Vitae. Multimatography in Russia at the end of the month had a couple 256-byte intro competitions where Colorful for MS-DOS and Magic Loom for the ZX Spectrum were released. Synergy dedicated to the ZX Spectrum here in Portugal took place on the first days of May and saw the release of a Sizecoding pack by Marquee Design, also worth mentioning. Then Outline in the Netherlands had 4 competitions for Sizecoding. Highlights are Atlantis Ryzen for the Micro W8 in the 128 bytes, B-Fish B-Square for the ZX Spectrum, and Encounter, a 256-byte intro for the Micro W8. In mid-June in the UK, Nova was taking place with a couple of Sizecoding competitions as well. Highlight goes to Space Opera 128 for the Vectrex, and Apoptosis and Soul Sand for the Micro W8 also released there. In the beginning of July, we had Nordlicht in Germany with Origins by Rivals for the Micro W8 winning the 512-byte intro competition. And in the same weekend, there was Summer Hack taking place in Sweden dedicated to the Atari with a 256-byte intro competition as well. It was won by 42 Bastion with Lisa 256 for the Atari Lynx. Then we had Lost Party in Poland, dedicated to all 8-bit platforms. Highlight to Saluda Sira, another entry of the series of cube animation challenges outdoing each other between Joker on the ZX Spectrum and Arise on the Commodore 64. This time fitting into a 1 kilobyte ZX Spectrum intro. They also had a 256-byte intro competition that was won by Tigris with Guess Who It Is by the ZX Spectrum. On the last weekend of July, there was DHAL 2024 Summer being held in Russia with a low-end 256-byte intro competition that was won by Kuvo with Flight, an intro for the Electronica BK. Then we had Assembly Summer 2024 in early August with a regular 1 kilobyte intro competition that was held in Finland as usual. That was once again won by Fulcrum with a Windows 1 kilobyte intro called Building from Bedrock 1K. Also in August, released outside of a demo party, we had Wobble by Neural and Rebels, a 512-byte intro for the Sharp X68000. And there was Silly Venture 2024 Summer Edition in Poland, known as the largest active Atari demo party. Highlights are the Atari Falcon 256-byte intro Taurus FC and Atom 128 bytes for the Atari ST, also Rolling Tire by Sheriff for the Atari XL. Later in August, Chaos Constructions in Russia had an old-school 256-byte intro competition with 2 very memorable releases by Uris for the ZX Spectrum, and also worth mentioning was WoW by Aerosoft winning the high-end demo competition with a 1 kilobyte intro for the browser. The next weekend, Xenium took place in Poland with a few Sizecoding entries on the old-school intro competition as well. A highlight to Bincone by Tigris for the ZX Spectrum. Later in September, we had QB Party in Hungary with a 256-byte intro competition. The winner was a Lucky Wheel Tunnel by Mesh of Absolute for the TIC-80. In early October, there was Deadline taking place in Germany with a packed 256-byte intro competition. Plex with 4 Seasons for the TIC-81 by just 2 points over Well-Wellen by Arekiet for the MS-DOS. Then in mid-October, we had the Alternative Party happening again in Finland after a few years of hiatus. Highlight goes to the 1 kilobyte intro by 8-bit for the TIC-80 and the Canon Cat graphical demo in 256-byte by Kivinen for the Canon Cat machine, which didn't even really have a graphical mode. Zoo Demo Party in Finland for the Commodore 64 had a 1-block competition with a ton of entries. The winner was Taboo by Ninja of the Dreams. Demo Splash in Carnegie Mellon in November also had the size constraint competition where Vanisher, a 1 kilobyte intro for Windows made by Rivals, win the competition. The basic one-liner competition at Transmission 64 was won by a Primal, and an Experience in Hungary saw the release of Superstars 512-byte intro for MS-DOS. And there was Inertia here in Portugal with a Sizecoding showcase with a highlight to String Object by Gorg, my own Entropy 256-byte for the TIC-80, the Love Byte 2025 invitation by Neon for the ZX Spectrum, and another tiny intro pack made by Marquee Design called Nimble. And on the same weekend in Poland, there was Silly Venture 2024 Winter Edition with an Atari Portfolio 256-byte intro released called Rayfolio 256. Galactica by Marquee Design for both the Amiga and Atari was released there as well, and the Airwolf theme Pokey cover for the Atari XL in 256 bytes by Jakub Husak, also worth mentioning. Outside of any competitions, there was Checker by Neural and Rebels for the Sharp X68000 again. And closing the year in Sizecoding, we need to highlight the Vintage Computing Christmas Challenge 2024. That got 215 releases in many diverse platforms, targeting a very unique Sizecoding challenge once again. And that was 2024, a year in Sizecoding. Whew, that was a lot of small intros, 560 to be exact, over 100 of them for the TIC80, the most popular platform to do some Sizecoding these days, closely followed by the MS-DOS and a whole lot of activity on old school platforms as well, mostly on the Atari family of computers, but also around the ZX Spectrum. Some more Commodore 64 entries than last year, thanks to the one-liner basic competitions, and always nice to see new intros for other uncommon platforms like the BBC Micro, the Vectrex, the Vector 06C, Acorn Archimedes, all sorts of different old school platforms. Also worth mentioning the rise in releases in Micro W8, also another fantasy console made specifically for the browser. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you spotted some interesting tiny intros in there to test run on your machine. Maybe even some inspiration of effects worth exploring for your next production to be released in 2025. Bye bye everyone, enjoy the rest of Love Byte and Mountain Bytes.